All right. Hello, everyone. I am here with Cynthia Overton. Cynthia, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Michael. I really appreciate you having me. I am so excited about this conversation. You have no idea.
Yay, me too. All right, let me tell you all a little bit about Cynthia before we get started. She has her doctorate. She is an author, speaker, an advocate for person-centered care. We'll get into that. Her perspective is shaped by her experience after a rare spinal cord injury that led to 7 weeks in 3 different hospitals where she sought high-quality care, negotiated with insurance companies, relearned to walk, and transitioned into a life with disability. That whole journey inspired her book, Cane Chronicles, Shaping the Future of Healthcare Through Person-Centered Care. In addition to all of that, Cynthia has a background helping organizations build fair, barrier-free workplaces, and she's the co-author of a forthcoming book called Meritocracy, which uses systems thinking to link talent management, inclusion, and financial performance. So let's get into it.
All right, let's do this.
All right. So, Cynthia, can we just first start out with your new book? I mean, I know it just came out recently. It's called The Cane Chronicles. Can you tell the listeners about the title and your own story? Just dive right in.
Sure. Okay, so Cane Chronicles, thanks for asking. Really grew out of my experience, like you said, in 3 different hospitals over 7 weeks, learning how to walk again. And it's really interesting because in terms of the title of the book, I've carried these clear canes with me for like more than 25 years. And at first, Mike, when I started using these, I was a little self-conscious about the way I walked. I was like, maybe nobody will see the cane if it's clear. And then like the reverse happened. Everybody saw the cane. It was a conversation. So the only person who didn't see the cane was when I would like leave it on a shopping cart or on a doorknob and forget about it and be like, where's my cane? But now it's really come to, represent me, my life, and really my experience with healthcare in terms of really seeking transparency and clarity. And so that's why I came up with the name Cane Chronicles, Shaping the Future of Healthcare Through Person-Centered Care.
Oh my gosh, it's like a metaphor and it's like all kinds of things. I love it.
Exactly.
All right. Can you tell us more though about your story? What led to all those experiences in hospitals and just from your personal perspective?
Okay, sure. Okay, so what happened? I was 26 years old at the time, living my best life. I was experiencing all these symptoms at first, like my fingers would just lock up without explanation. I'd have to use my hand to manually open them. I was kind of going through these experiences where I knew what was happening around, but I couldn't move. I just had brain fog. And then, I had all these tests. Doctor couldn't find anything, but then one day my foot stopped working. And that's when I went in and she was like, you've got to go to the hospital. And so essentially after they ran a bunch of tests, an MRI found a lesion in my spinal cord. So this was at the C6, C7 region, and this lesion had hemorrhaged, which was causing the foot drop. And so essentially I was told that, this thing had to come out. I was 26 at the time. I was not ready for any of this. In fact, Michael, when the doctor tried to tell me what was going on, I was in such denial. I was just like, you can just tell them. And, I was referring to my family in the room, and he was like, no, you need to hear this too. And so, yeah, it was a very scary time. I mean, we did not know what was going to happen. This was back in 1993. No, goodness, this was back in, oh, goodness gracious, 1997. And, healthcare, or I should say medical care and the science and technology just had not evolved to where it is today. And so there were very few surgeons who could even perform this operation. It was very, very risky. To make a long story short, I ended up getting an excellent surgeon to perform the surgery. After the surgery, I was paralyzed from the waist down and went through a lot of physical and occupational rehabilitation, along with a little recreational therapy thrown in,
Mm.
and got to the point where I'm walking now with a cane. So now today, my health is great. I consider myself recovered. I do walk with a cane. I have a limp. I live in pain. Here's an interesting fact a lot of people don't know. I live in pain every single day,
Mm.
every single moment of every single day. But I'm just so used to it over like 28 years that I really don't even think about it until I bring it up like I just did.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What do you do to like not think about it? What are your strategies?
Yeah. I mean, so from what I have been told, sleep is just great across the board for just overall wellness. And I have found that when I get sleep and rest and movement, sleep, rest, and movement really, really helps. I will also say that for some of the muscle pain, the musculoskeletal pain, acupuncture has really helped, but it's the neuropathic pain that remains and just kind of bothers me all the time. I've been in and out of physical therapy since I had the spinal cord surgery. I made a decision early on not to take medicine for the pain, just in terms of it's just not something that I wanted to do long
Wow.
term. So,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Wow. And now all of that, like, what did that make you realize or think about the healthcare system? Like, how did that all lead to you getting so interested in that and writing a book about it?
Sure. So let me just say in general, in terms of the healthcare system, a lot of things within the healthcare system that people might not realize is negotiable. So, for example, we were able to find an amazing specialist to perform the surgery. He was out of network. And so, even though he had the clinical expertise, the background, he did like more than 200 of these surgeries a year. The surgeon who the health insurance company was going to assign to me for a year. The best one that they would pay for did 10 a year. Now, the spinal cord is very important in terms of it
Yeah.
controls how you walk, your bowel and bladder functioning, how you regulate temperature, perceive pain. I tell people reach is massive. Like if Beyonce was a body part, she would be a spinal cord because it just controls everything, right? So it was really important to get a surgeon that, was familiar with this procedure. And so that's why I say things are negotiable. My parents went back and forth with the health insurance company to get them to pay for the surgery. And they spoke with them. They spoke with people who knew the people at the health insurance company. They spoke with policymakers. I mean, they really would not take no for an answer, but they kept on getting no. They kept on trying.
Mm-hmm.
They were, Michael, actually ready to take out a loan against the
Mm.
house. And in the morning that my mother was going to fill out the paperwork at the bank, the insurance company called and said they would pay for the specialist to do it. But it was in their best interest, Michael, because I mean, you know, if something had gone terribly wrong, then they would have either been faced with, more physical therapy that I would require. And then, death was also on the
Mm.
table. And
Mm.
so that would have opened up a whole nother can of worms in terms of we tried to, my family saying, I wouldn't have been around to advocate that,
Yeah.
my family saying, we tried to get you to have somebody who was skilled in this to pay for it and you refused. So,
Right.
at the end of the day, Michael, I would say with that decision, everybody won. Um, but healthcare in general, I would say you have to be your own best advocate. And when I say that, I think of it within the context of the circle around you. I was 26 at the time. I didn't know about pushing back and all that,
Yeah.
but my family did.
Mm-hmm.
And they really advocated for me to get the best care possible. Now, when it comes to person-centered care. I didn't have this vocabulary back then. I didn't know
Right.
anything about person-centered care and
Yeah.
this,
Did
that, the other.
anyone? When did that start being a
Yeah,
thing?
so it's a thing of where person-centered care actually has roots that are dated back decades. Same thing with patient-centered care, and they're kind of two related but distinctive types of healthcare delivery. It's just a thing of where back then, it just was not as common to see that type of healthcare delivery as it is now. In the book, I draw on different sets of principles for person-centered care. One of the sets is called the Picker Principles on Person-Centered Care, and they're developed by the Pickard Institute. They're based in England, and I draw on those principles as I describe my experience in 3 different hospitals over 7 weeks. And then I also draw on the National Advisory Board's principles. And while they don't use the terminology person-centered care specifically, they align with person-centered care. And those principles are really focused on older adults and people with disabilities. So the way that I kind of came to this, I really attribute this to my surgeon, my neurosurgeon, Dr. Fred Epstein. No relation, in case you're wondering. But but Dr. Epstein was just this amazing human being. When we first found out about him, we did not know how to get in touch with him because this was like before the internet and people were online. And,
Right.
it was a thing of where my sister-in-law found him in LexisNexis. And so we knew he
Nice.
existed. Yeah, I know. That's old school. We knew he existed, but we didn't know how to get to him. My cousin, who's a physician, and we knew that he was in New York. My cousin, who's a physician, told my mother, well, I don't know him, but I have a friend in New York who practices medicine there. Maybe he knows him. So my cousin called her friend, says, do you know Dr. Epstein? And the friend says, not only do I know him, I'm having breakfast with him in the morning.
What?
Yeah. And so that's how we got connected to him. We got word that, my family should call. My father called. The next day, the person who answered the phone says he's been expecting your phone call. And I shouldn't even say the negotiations, the discussions beforehand was, all right, we need to get her MRI films. And back then, this was before everything was digitized. So my father had
Hmm.
to find a place that made copies of these films, get them to New York, Federal Express. Then when Dr. Epstein saw him, she has to come out. She has to see me right now, like immediately. My father and Dr. Epstein connect. Dr. Epstein is really trying to problem solve in terms of understanding the insurance company doesn't want to pay. Oftentimes, these specialists are much more expensive. That these out-of-network specialists are more expensive. So he told my father, if the insurance company pays, I'll take whatever they pay. I can't do anything about the hospital administration fee, but with the surgeon's fee, just whatever they pay is fine. Insurance company ended up paying for the surgery. That kind of goes to the principle related to, fast access to care. He understood the urgency and was doing whatever he could to remove barriers to get us out there to New York for the surgery. And then once we get there, he really exhibits another principle of person-centered care, which really relates to empathy and great bedside manner, the whole compassionate piece. And it's funny, Michael, because when we got to New York for the surgery, he wanted to meet with the entire family, and engaging family is another principle. He
Mm.
wanted to engage with the entire family before the surgery. So we go to his office, and this was a few days before the surgery. We go to his office, and the door plate outside of his office, it just says Fred, right? It doesn't say Dr. Fred Epstein, Dr. Epstein,
Hmm.
just Fred. So like this is the guy who's about to dig into my spinal cord. He's going by just Fred, right? Like not even Mr. Rogers goes
Uh,
by just Fred. But that was his way just to really make us feel at ease and feel comfortable. And
yeah.
so Dr. Epstein, was The first, and I've had like my dentist was good when I was little. I really liked him, but he was the first interaction that I've had, I would say, with a healthcare professional as an adult that really made me think, wow, this is what healthcare can look like.
Hmm.
And so, that was really what planted the seed for me thinking about healthcare, and is really, one of the inspirations behind the book.
Yeah. And now you're giving us pieces of it, but can you give us the elevator pitch? Just what is person centered care?
What is person-centered care? Okay, the best way to really describe person-centered care is to talk about other types of healthcare delivery first. So you think about traditional clinical care. You go to the doctor, you tell the doctor what's wrong. The doctor says, all right, here's what you need to do next. All right, then you've got patient-centered care, and that involves the patients more in terms of getting their preferences, their interests, shared decision making. But then when you have person-centered care, with person-centered care, you're thinking about the entire context of a person's life outside of the clinical setting. You think about, of course, what are you share what your preferences are, what your goals are, how different treatment options might impact your personal life. Those are all a factor. Your person-centered care is really about shared decision making. So not you just telling your doctor what you like and them saying yes or no. It's really more of a collaborative approach to healthcare. I always say that it's healthcare for people who live in the real world, not in a medical chart,
Hmm.
because we're all different.
Good.
So the easiest way, though, that was kind of like the serious way to explain it. The easiest way and the most, I would say, recognizable way to explain person-centered care is to think about it like the evolution of television. So remember back in the day, we had three big network channels and those kind of like cartoon channels, those two cartoon channels, that would be traditional care, right? Very, very limited in scope, not very personalized. Then you think about the evolution to cable. You have more choices, but still you had this set system bound within
Hmm.
somebody else's schedule. That's how I describe person-centered care. And now we're in the streaming era. Everything is on demand, how you like it. The system helps you make choices, supports your choices. And that's like person-centered care.
Hmm. Okay. And like, does it happen a lot of places, person centered care? Is it just really rare?
Sure. So it's so interesting because I have not heard a lot of people using, vocabulary person-centered care. I hear a lot of patient-centered care, but not too much person-centered care. Let me give you an example of person-centered care that I have experienced that I've actually shared. I shared this with the organization. So I'm a member of One Medical. Are you familiar with One Medical?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it's kind of like this is how I describe it. I don't know if this is how they would describe it, but it's kind of like I describe it as a concierge service. I don't think they would describe it as that, though, to tell you the truth. But essentially, they've got this it's a network of doctors. They have an app. You do everything yourself in terms of going online. It's very easy to make an appointment. You can make telehealth appointments. You can make appointments for the next day if they're available. They've always been available for me whenever I've needed to make them. And so essentially, you subscribe. It's through a big tech company, uh, but it has really fit into my life on a number of occasions. I'll give
Hmm.
you the most dramatic one, but there have been other times where I've been out of town and needed to access One Medical. So I was going to a family event in Detroit and had developed an abscess on my skin. Well, I know that these things, if they burst, can be very dangerous.
Hmm.
So I decided to be responsible. So I went online, made a telehealth appointment for the next morning because I had a flight the next day. So I go online and the doctor says, okay, what's going on? And I tell her, she was like, oh, you got to be seen in person for that. I was like, well, you don't understand. I've got a flight I have to catch. And so she just goes into problem solving mode. So what she does is she puts in a prescription for antibiotics across the street from where I live. Then she gets online on the One Medical platform, finds a physician that is on the way to the airport, makes an appointment for me. I go get the antibiotics in case I need them, come back to the house, pick up my bag, get in an Uber. I take the Uber to the doctor's office, which, Michael, is literally less than a half a block off of the route to the airport. I get seen, cleared to fly. That doctor makes another appointment for me when I get back in town and I'm on my way. And so that's really care that fits your life. I had a similar experience. I was in Chicago and checking out of an Airbnb, stubbed my toe. My baby toe went that way. Everything else was this way. I was about to get on
Mm.
a plane, got on the One Medical app, found a One Medical office that was on the way to the airport, went, the healthcare provider looked at it, told me exactly what I needed to do, uh, told me the medicine that I needed to take, wrapped it up, had me, get it x-rayed, and I was on my way to the airport. So that's what I mean in terms of healthcare that really fits your life. So is anybody, doing it, according to principles for person-centered care? I would say there are folks doing it. I just don't know that it's framed in this, way of person-centered care, but it's definitely person-centered care.
That sounds pretty amazing. Not like most of my healthcare experiences in this country. I mean, ironically, I've had great experiences like that in other countries,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where I wasn't even a citizen and didn't even have
Right.
insurance or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But that sounds pretty good. Now, kind of taking a detour. One of the things you talk about in your book, which I think would be really interesting for people to hear about, is how you talk about transitioning from a person without a disability to a person with a disability.
Yeah.
Like, can you talk about the mental part of that?
But yeah, I would love to. And I know now that there's research behind transitioning into disability. At 26, that never crossed my mind to look to see how this worked and, all that. So I'm happy to share my experience. So transitioning, and let me tell you, this was my experience.
Mm,
So for me, it was confusing because, a lot of times with the transition in life, there's notice or a ceremony or, there's something involved to mark a transition. I had no idea I had a disability, Michael. I mean, I literally did not get suspicious until the doctor offered me paperwork for disability parking.
mm,
And even I was like, "Who's this for?"
mm,
I was in a wheelchair and I was confused. And the reason I didn't know I had a disability because, growing up, I didn't really know of anybody who identified as having a disability. I mean, like, I used to date a guy who was born with no fingers on one hand. I just thought that was part of his charm. Nobody was going around giving out disability stickers, right? But I will say that, like, once I understood what was happening and that I would get one of those great priority parking spots, I was like, yes, I have a disability. Where do where do I sign? But it was a thing of where I just had no idea. Um, but I did know, of course, I was, things were different. And what was so not, I don't know if the word would be confusing. It was a thing of where I just felt like the same person on the inside,
mm,
but I wasn't treated as the same person. Whether it was people who would engage with me, but just not, be sure not to look at the wheelchair. They would just stay focused on my eyes, or even people kind of, looking at me with, just extreme pity. I remember one day, this was actually when I was in the hospital. one of the rehab hospital, or in the rehab hospital, we got to go out for a field trip. This was for a holiday shopping, and I was just so happy to be out. And I mean, like, I was on a mission. This was my one opportunity to get some holiday gifts because I had to go back and, so I just remember being on the accessible van, and a lady just looked at me with, oh, she looked like she wanted to cry, and it was,
Mm,
I felt bad. Honestly, I felt bad. I wanted to say, "It's okay, like, I'm having a great day, I'm out shopping," but it was, yeah, it was, transitioning was difficult, and I just didn't
mhm,
know what to expect. And back then, this was the '90s, of course. Everybody, Michael, was so focused on my physical recovery that nobody offered me any type of support when it comes to dealing with these changes and emotions. And I mean, I was 26 years old and literally didn't. I would go to sleep at night. This was before I had the surgery, literally not knowing if I was going to wake up in the morning. But there was
mm,
no emotional support around that, none about transitioning into disability. And back then, my only concern, Michael, was, will I walk again? And not even will I walk again, will I walk straight again?
mhm,
And I wish that I had been more focused on quality of life. And, I I didn't know what I didn't know back then, but I've got to tell you, sometimes, it's interesting how folks even respond now when I walk with a cane, but I'm going to tell you, I'm so focused on other aspects of my life. Don't get me wrong, being disabled is a part of who I am, just like being Black is a part of who I am. Being a woman is part of who I am. Um, and I actually love all those things about me. There are so many things going on in my life, though, that I can't really just be defined by that one little slice. But it's an important part about me. It's just not everything, right?
yeah. Gosh, thank you for sharing all that. It sounds hard to go through that without mental supports of any
Yeah.
kind. Um, one of the things I'm curious more about how people react to you because of course, on this podcast we talk a lot about inclusion, and part of inclusion is accessibility, and in engaging with people who have disabilities and making sure everyone feels valued in the same way. And there's so much misunderstanding and confusion about disabilities that people often don't know what to do.
Uh-huh.
And like you're saying, right? Like people staring at you and not looking, like without blink. In the book, it's funny the way you describe it. You're like how people would not blink. They just stare at you. So they didn't inadvertently look at the wheelchair, right? Or, when I was doing interviews leading up to writing my book, a guy in a wheelchair was saying, yeah, somebody's always making a joke like, oh, don't go getting a speeding ticket with that thing. Like, trying to show that they're comfortable when they're really not.
Yeah.
And like, five people might make that same joke in one day or something.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you can talk more about people relating to you and how it feels and how you negotiate those interactions.
Yeah. When I used a wheelchair, it was challenging because I was going through a period where, and I think that it is different for people who are transitioning versus folks who have been disabled for a longer amount of time. So as somebody who was I was still trying to figure myself out. So it didn't feel good. But I will also say that there are so many kind of different uh, rules of society that people are not accustomed to activating. And I think that, at least for me, it's always been important to give grace, because I think that we have all been in a situation where that we weren't really sure kind of like what to do, if that makes sense. So I would say that, yes, I have experienced subtle acts of exclusion. Um, but they were prompted by something external. So even they were conscious in an effort to be appropriate that may or may not have resulted in the outcome that everybody would have wanted. But I will also say this, Michael. I would also say that I have almost kind of like committed subtle acts of exclusion against myself. I mean,
Okay, tell us
yeah.
about that.
Well, I mean, like, me being disabled and what happened, that's a part of who I am. Michael, there have been friends that I have known for years who did not know my backstory.
Hmm.
And it's not a thing of where I was trying to hide anything. Like I said, I'm just always focused on so many different things, and I'm fortunate to have, a really diverse group of friends and network. And there are just so many other things that are interesting
Yeah.
that are going on. I'm even surprised that people are interested in my story now because it's just like a historical fact, to me anyway.
Uh-huh.
But because I wasn't trying to be intentional about not saying things, but maybe people are waiting for me to open the door that I just haven't opened. And I'm just
Mm.
shocked when I find
Mm.
out that it's like, wait a minute, how have we known each other for all of these years? And I never mentioned, or this just never came up. And I think that for me, here's the thing. I don't know, I haven't tested this theory, but I think that for some people, it's an elephant in the room.
Mhm.
And for me, it's, just everyday business.
Yeah.
I even had a guy that I used to date for a long time. No, a long time ago. I had a meal with him a few weeks ago. And, this was somebody, I don't know how serious he was about me, but I was serious about him. And no, we're very good friends now. But one of the things he said was, he asked, did I ever treat you in a way that was different or that was inappropriate? And because we dated like 10 years after I had the surgery. And I
Mm.
think it was a thing of where I never said too much about it. It was just a thing of where I walked with a cane and he never probed. And he just learned so much from the book. And he was just
Mm.
really surprised that there was not as much conversation.
Yeah.
And it was just a thing of where like I said, I'm just so focused on other things.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I bet people don't want to say I bet they're trying so hard to not say the wrong thing. Or,
100%.
and probably part of that is even just asking about it.
I would say that you're absolutely right. And I really think that it just goes to show that, we've got these social norms or these rules or whatever, and then we've got reality, right? And at the end of the day, socializing really is, not just about these rules, whether they be written or unwritten. It's an art and a science in terms of socializing. And sometimes it's a hit and sometimes it's a miss.
Hmm.
Uh
Yeah.
so
And we almost like we don't do we don't do ourselves any favors necessarily in this country, the way everything tends to be so segregated.
uh,
And so people don't just get regular experience interacting with people who are different from them. And I think that includes disability.
yeah, I think you're right 110%. And I think that that's probably one of the reasons that I really appreciate it when opportunities do come up to, just engage with people who are different.
Yeah, for sure. I love that too. And it's constantly surprising to me that some people don't really like that.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, what about, I mean, you've folks listening might not know this. I know this, that you've done a ton of work on inclusion in
Mhm.
different industries. And I wonder, like, how does this inform the work that you do, creating inclusive spaces? And can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, my background, when I think about my education background, I studied educational technology, but my focus was on students with disabilities and how they use disabilities, or excuse me, how they use technology to engage with their learning
Wow, I did
environments.
not know. I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. So at the time when I first started my doctoral program, this was 2000, no, Lordy B, this was 1999. And, we had just transitioned very rapidly to everything online. We still even had the Ethernet was new back then. Before that we had the dial-up, but high-speed Ethernet in our dorm rooms in graduate school. So bottom line is technology really, really helped me, and I wanted to study how it was helping other folks with disabilities. And so
Hmm.
that's how I got into the whole technology and disability, whether it be assistive technology, technology that is accessible for people with disabilities. And in studying that, I also studied policies that and legislation that impact people with disabilities. So that is really what started my work in the disability arena. And then that kind of broadened to more general diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging work.
Yeah, all of that. And
Mhm.
I know that you worked in the tech space a
Uh,
lot doing that diversity, inclusion, equity, belonging work. What tell us about the tech space? That what's different about doing that work there?
yeah, so it's interesting just in terms of the environment and the culture. I mean, when you're in the tech industry, the culture is built around speed. You're failing fast, you're breaking things. That approach can really kind of expedite innovation. But I would say that it does not translate well when it comes to, like, real structural issues, and so I would say that's kind of like how it's, different in tech. You can't really just, fail fast your way through systemic barriers that have been, like,
Yeah.
built over decades, right? And so I think that what I really kind of learned from that field is that a lot of times we really underestimate how intention, consistency, accountability, how important all of those factors are when it comes to, creating like a barrier-free and a fair workplace.
Yeah.
And it's not about just programs and headcounts. It's really about redesigning systems to make sure that people have real opportunities to thrive. So yeah, and that's actually something that Paulo Godiano and I dive into in our upcoming book on meritocracy, which you talked
Yeah.
about earlier.
Yeah.
So that'll be released spring of next year. And that really takes a look at how organizations can link talent, satisfaction, and business performance by really building these systems that work for people instead of working against people.
Okay, I love that. Could you talk a little bit more about that? Obviously, meritocracy is this idea that's in the news a lot. There's a lot of misunderstanding or misuse,
Use.
maybe
Yeah.
deliberately.
Yeah.
But what? Tell us more.
Sure. Yeah. So we really look at and this is something that stems from Paulo's previous work on his book Measuring Inclusion. So a lot of times people will think that meritocracy and DEI are two separate things. And with this book, we introduce this inclusive meritocracy framework that really goes to show that the two are interrelated and are essentially the same. But to your point, oftentimes the term meritocracy has been misused, misdefined. And so we really kind of go into deep. What does that look like? What does inclusive meritocracy look like? And then more importantly, how can organizations, instead of focusing on individual people or individual actions, how can they focus on systems to really future proof and protect their workforce.
That's great and so timely. And I hope that everyone reads that one as well. That's so important, showing that these are not opposing things.
Exactly.
Yeah. I wanted to talk. I'm sure people can already tell that you're pretty funny. Your book is really funny for a serious topic that it's talking about.
Thank you.
Could you talk more about that, as well as I know that you're interested in stand-up? I would love to hear about that. It's a cool combination of things.
Yeah, yeah. I will say that my work with stand-up has really prepared me for the book, for talking about the book. And it's just a lot of fun. It's so interesting because people say all the time, how do you get up there on stage and I don't know, for me, it's just fun. I will tell you, the most difficult speaking experience that I have ever had in my entire life was when I launched the book and gave 2-minute remarks. And I was
Mm,
just so, I don't know, it was a culmination of a few things, just, seeing people there and, everything that has happened over the past 28 years kind of coming to a head with I don't know, but I was very nervous. But when I'm on stage, I don't know, I forget to be nervous. It's a lot of fun because you can use stand-up comedy as a way, when framed appropriately, to really talk about things that are very, very important to you, things that might be uncomfortable otherwise. I, talk about disability stuff all the time,
mm,
with stand up. And it's challenging because just like we were talking about earlier, a lot of people, we've been conditioned not to laugh at anything disability related. Now you got somebody on stage with a disability is trying to get you to laugh at these disability jokes. So I tell them it's not like Marion Barry. Remember Marion Barry? And
mm-hmm.
I said, you're not going to be thinking tonight, that cane set me up. No, it's okay to laugh.
That's great. That's cool. I mean, do you feel like people come out of that having learned, not just laughed, but having learned something?
I do. I do think that they come out learning something new. And for me, I never want to make anybody feel bad. Even if somebody intentionally disregards my feelings, and maybe they even have the intention of making me feel bad, which as a grown woman, I don't experience that that much, but that's them. And I can't control what they do and how they engage with people. I can control how I engage with people.
Hmm.
And I want people leaving conversations with me feeling informed, educated, empowered, and feeling good about themselves. And so that's my main focus, whether I'm delivering a formal speech or if I'm on stage doing stand up. I do want people to learn, but I also want them to feel good. And I
Hmm.
and I don't, you know, I don't believe in punishing people,
Hmm.
especially for mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure you encounter lots of mistakes, as do people with a lot of different disabilities. There's
Yep.
such a range, right?
There's I am on the receiving end of mistakes. Encounter on mistakes, and B, I make mistakes. So I want people to have grace with me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can think of times I have too. There's there's the whole normalization thing that happens, I bet, when you do that too. That's so important for
Uh-huh.
people to get. Sometimes when I can tell people don't know a lot about disabilities or feel uncomfortable, I'll even recommend a documentary like Crip Camp or something
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
as a way for people to just get a little bit normalized with how people are kind of like you said, just living their lives and not always thinking about that thing that you're thinking about.
Exactly. 110%. I mean, at the end of the day, everybody just wants to be part of society. Everybody wants to be included. And here's the thing, everybody wants to be seen. And so I think that, whether it's stand up or, documentaries or other interesting outlets, all great opportunities for people with disabilities and other folks to just be seen and understood and respected.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of a good place to start to wrap up. But first, you got to ask you in the book, you talk about your love for the Golden
Oh,
Girls, and I got to ask you about that.
okay, first of all, who doesn't love the Golden Girls? I
Okay, yeah.
love the Golden Girls. So, as folks may know, the Golden Girls came out in the 80s, right? And I love the Golden Girls because, first of all, there are these group of women that were so different from me, and they were so funny, and the writing was so sharp, and I got a window into their life. And, yes, they're characters, but they were just intriguing. But then the fact that these women were all so different from each other,
Hmm.
but they just blended and complemented each other so beautifully. So, when the Golden Girls came out, I was in my 20s, and, I got to see how these old ladies were living. I don't know how I feel about the Golden Girls now because I'm technically the same age as they were. So,
That's wild.
isn't it? I
Yeah,
mean, like, I am not exaggerating.
that is
Uh,
wild.
but I mean, the humor is classic. The hairstyles not so much, and the attire. But yeah, I love two things in life that just bring me joy: the Golden Girls, and I love my K-dramas. Like, if I could have any job in the world, it would be like doing consumer testing for K-dramas,
All right, you
and
got
giving
people might
feedback.
not know what that is.
Oh,
You got to explain it.
Korean dramas.
And why do you love Korean dramas?
The Korean dramas I'm making the distinction because I have seen some that I'm not crazy about, but the ones that I love, they just really do such an amazing job of capturing human emotion. And that's related to love, it's related to humor, related to family. I mean, we're talking about themes that are very universal. And even though the actors and even the context are from a different background, anybody can see themselves in those roles because they just cover human emotions. So I
Yeah.
I love my K-dramas.
I love it. You're making me nostalgic for living in Brazil and watching the Brazilian novelas. It's like so popular that everyone would watch particular ones. They got really
Uh,
popular. You could be out on the street and it was coming on, and you just pop into like a convenience store and watch with the people that are working there on the TV there. It was just such a communal experience that I love too.
yeah.
That is very cool. Okay, Cynthia, I always end with giving people an optional homework assignment if they want it, something they could do or think about or read. What have you got in mind that you would suggest?
Okay, so Clear Cane Chronicles. I'd love
Certainly.
for you
Read
to
the
read
book.
that. Read the
Yep.
book. And just to let you know, at the end, there are a ton of, I call them insights. You might call them recommendations for patients, providers, and payers that are practical, actionable, all that good stuff. But when it comes to one thing that you can do today, here's a little optional homework assignment that is not going to be fun or feel good at all. But here's what I would suggest. I would suggest that you go online or go through your mail, find your insurance policy, and actually read it.
Mm,
Um, and as you're reading it, identify 3 questions. Then take those questions and call your insurance company and get the answers to those questions. If you speak with somebody who is particularly helpful, ask them their name and their telephone number so that you can reach them directly should you need to.
mm.
Then jot down the things that made the experience uh, easy, and then also jot down the things that made the experience difficult, and do what you can to resolve what made it difficult. And the reason that I want you to do that is because that is a dry run. The time to engage with your insurance policy is not when you're desperate.
Mm.
It's when you don't need it that you're gonna wanna learn it. And I hope that you never have to rely on it for, an unexpected health condition, but if you do, I promise you, going through that exercise is gonna put you a lot further ahead. Doing it now when you're in a clear mind space is going to make things better for you should you need to draw on that information.
Wow. Important and so not fun. Um, Thank you, though. That's such great advice. I mean, you lived it. And
Yeah.
so thank you for that. And it's been so great talking with you. I know people got so much out of that. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just really appreciate you holding space for these types of conversations, Michael. There's just the need could not be greater than it is right now for conversations when it comes to culture, inclusion, people coming together, people understanding differences, and people working together to find solutions to common problems and to achieve common goals. So, thank you for all of the work that you invest in this to make this podcast happen.
Thank you so much. And so beautifully said in terms of the urgency of all of that. All right. Awesome. Thank you, Cynthia. And bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.